Catherine, would you please take roll?
Couch? Here. Voorhees?
Here.
Leahy?
Here.
Gamba?
Here.
Davis?
Here.
Godes?
Here.
Trotter?
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. First on our agenda is an update from Tom Newland on the Grand Avenue Bridge.
Thank you, Mayor. So that's my monthly update to let you know what's going to happen construction and traffic impact-wise during the next month. First, I'll start with the asphalt overlay, which is kind of hitting close to home here, as they say, right out the window here. On Midland Avenue, we'll be milling tonight from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and starting on Friday and going to somewhere about a week from Friday, June 9th or so, depending on weather and progress. Now, this is an alternate one-lane configuration, much like we did on US 6th, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. You could expect up to 20-minute delays, so use caution when going through this area. We might have some weekend work as well, once again, depending on weather. Downtown, we're paving today, as you can see out the window. We'll also do that through Saturday the 3rd. Basically, tomorrow we'll be paving 8th and 9th Streets, and the detour will be in place. And there will be some milling tonight as well to finish off the milling work. Utility and traffic signal work, that's those, I took a picture of one of the new posts where the posts will go for the new traffic signals on 8th and 9th Street. That'll continue downtown, both on the 8th and 9th Street intersections. The 8th Street between Colorado and Cooper will be closed from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. Next week, June 6th through 9th. That's Tuesday through Friday of next week. And the utility work that we're doing in the Hot Springs parking lot continues. As far as the interchanges go, we're still in a one-lane configuration through exit 114 through June. However, we hope to have that project complete, that work complete by the Strawberry Days weekend. They're really pushing to do that. As far as the exit 116 interchange goes, we still have that reduced lane eastbound for the rock work on the piers and staging. Anticipate delays still at the 6th and Laurel intersection. As we discussed this morning, there's also going to be a lot of movement of that lane there while we start piecing together the various sections of the roundabout. So look for that lane to change over time, especially this month. And we'll have that closure continue from 5:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. on the eastbound exit 116 ramp. That's going Denver, and that'll happen through the end of June. Structural walls are continuing. The masonry work's almost done on the west side, and we're doing the masonry and pouring more concrete on the east side. Do expect occasional one-lane closures on the Grand Avenue Bridge during the month. Not as often as previously, but we do have to stage concrete from 9 a.m. to 3 on some days. The traffic bridge, boy, it's really coming along. The abutment work, the structural walls, and then we'll also be doing barrier and parapet pours ongoing throughout the month. Here's some views from the deck of the bridge. The deck's been poured, and it's a pretty impressive stretch of concrete. And then under the pedestrian underpass is also moving along nicely. It's got the lighting being installed as well as the concrete work, the pedestrian connection for the connections. I'm showing you a picture of that here. And here's the lighting that's going to be within the pedestrian underpass. They're kind of stage lighting that is random through there. So it's going to be interesting when it's done. It'll look really good. And on the horizon, we have elevator building installation is ongoing through the summer. And we also have a public meeting schedule. I'm sorry, I forgot to bring you a hard copy of this. Deborah, can I send you a PDF to distribute? The two that I've highlighted here are the big ones, the community open houses that we're having at the community center. One on June 27th, and that's kind of a lunch meeting at 11 a.m. And then On August 1st at 4:30 p.m. after work, we'll have another open house. And that's all I have for this month.
Thanks, Tom. Does anyone have any questions for Tom? Anything?
No. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, next on our agenda, if there's anyone out there who would like to speak to us about something that is not on our agenda this evening, we would be happy to give you 3 minutes of our time. Going once, going twice. Okay. We will move on. Is there any council comments that anyone would like to make? Go ahead, Shelley.
I have just a comment that I wanted to pass along from a neighbor in my neighborhood, downtown area. Just for the detour and just overall use of the 12th Street Ditch Trail and the culvert that goes underneath Grand Avenue. That culvert can get, it's a pretty good passageway for people who live in that area, and it's used a lot. It can be a narrow trail, and there are some signs that say bicycles shall dismount, but they like to go kind of flying through there. And the lights are not always working in that trail, and they get very dirty and kind of covered up with cobwebs and everything else. So I guess the request there is maybe reevaluate signage or something that gets the bikes to dismount so that we don't have a crash. This particular neighbor had 2 encounters this week with high-speed bikes kind of flying through that underpass there. And also just maybe maintenance of that culvert. I don't know if there's some way to paint it white. We could power wash it and paint the ceiling white inside, but also maintain the lights in there. And otherwise it works great, but to clean it up, especially prior to the bridge closure, so that there's probably going to be a lot more traffic through there during the bridge closure. So,
Okay.
thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Any further council comments? Okay. Moving on, we have a Arbor Day proclamation. There's someone here, I think, to accept it.
Yeah.
All right, come on up. I'll go ahead and read it, and then I'll sign it and give it to you. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, beautifies our community, and are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas once again Glenwood Springs has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and desires to continue its tree planting ways. Now therefore, I, Michael Gamba, Mayor of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, do hereby proclaim June 13th, 2017 as Arbor Day in the City of Glenwood Springs. I urge all citizens to support efforts to care for our trees and woodlands, to support our city's community forestry program, and to plant trees to gladden the hearts and promote the well-being of present and future generations. Given under my hand and the official seal of the City of Glenwood Springs and the City of Colorado this first day of June 2017. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Kathy and a second by Steve to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have a presentation regarding the Grand Avenue Bridge monuments and lighting.
Hi, this is Leslie Bethel. I'm the director for the Downtown Development Authority, and I think the staff report is actually from Deborah.
However, Leslie essentially wrote it, so.
Yeah. Okay, so what you have before you is a request to fund the monuments for the Grand Avenue Bridge. And if you are looking at your screen, we have two of these lights. We actually have four more on the top of the Ped Bridge Tunnel. And then we have four of these monuments that have been moved up to the abutment wall here, and then there's two here, and then there's two at the touchstone point of the traffic bridge on the north side of the river. So our request tonight is to fund those monuments, and there's a bit of an explanation in your staff report. They were actually in the DDA budget, but when we had to fund the storm sewer design work that we did on Cooper and 7th to kind of deal with additional stormwater flows, the DDA went ahead and paid for that, even though that wasn't in our budget for this year. And we discussed the possibility of City Council paying for the monuments since we went forward and paid for that.
Yeah. We
So-
can't always be as flexible in the DDA and how quickly we pay people. And apparently people do like to get paid.
Everyone's-
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yes, so before you were asking for the funds to purchase these. The JV contractor will install them. They would like to install them prior to August 14th to have them all in place. And so we need to fabricate them, and we can't fabricate them until we have sign-off on the cost. So the costs are exactly what we estimated over the past, I think we've been actually working on these monuments for a couple years, and you all have seen them, or the council folks that have been on council has seen them before. So any questions that you have, I'm here to answer.
The only question I have is the installation by the GC, is that part of our cost, or is that, I see the fabrication costs here. Are we also paying for the installation?
To the best of my knowledge, no, we are not. And it's, you know, we did have a discussion regarding why are we paying for these, and they were not included in the Grand Avenue Bridge drawings or estimates or costs. We did not create a force account, which would have been a really good idea for them. But since we didn't do it, we are where we are, and we want to get it done.
Leslie, do these include, there were some signs on the monuments, does that include that or not?
Yes. So these are the monuments that will sit at the abutment wall. There are four of them, and then again at the north touchdown point. And those are four-sided. They're internally illuminated. They're exactly what you guys looked at and approved months ago. Is that your question, Kathy?
Yep, that's my question.
And then, you know, just so you know, we have the sign on the parking structure is very similar to this, and our goal is to tie it all together. You know, we're using a similar font, similar materials, so that we have these pieces repeated through our town, and that will just help to tie it all together.
So Leslie, there are four of this particular monument, and that's at each end of the bridge, south and north end, or at the touchdown points?
Mhm.
'Cause
We-
the
Oh, they're right at the
So-
abutments.
They're right up here, if you can see where my cursor is. They're on the abutment wall. And we made that change because in the design, these monuments here are on a 45. We thought that the monuments would be too tall in that location, and they would form more of a gateway right as you're coming into the downtown and as you're leaving the downtown. And the notion behind these originally was that they were a traffic calming idea. So you see the monuments. I mean, the more peripheral things we have going on, the more the drivers are going to want to slow down, take a look, and especially as they enter into our downtown. It was as much that as it was monumentation.
Okay, but there's 2 on the north and 2 on the south.
Correct.
Okay, and what are the little white ones on the corner? Are they?
These?
Yes.
Okay. So that's our family, right? This is the full design package, and that's what these look like. And because of their location, they will have a lot of mag chloride, a lot of sand and dirt, and so we could not find anything off the shelf to purchase that would be strong enough. And all of this is coordinated with the Bridges lighting designer. It's David Roederer, Clanton Design out of Boulder. So everything is coordinated with the bridge so that it all works.
Okay, okay, but this doesn't have specific messaging to it.
No, it's just a light.
Okay, great.
This is messaging. And then anytime that these columns appear in a pedestrian area, I think we've only chosen 8 of these. We have this brass plaque that was also sitting out there by the mock-up.
Okay, right.
So it's another just detail. Any other questions?
All right, thanks, Leslie.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah,
I
thanks.
would open
Appreciate
it up for public comment, if anyone from the public would like to comment on this item. All right, seeing none, I will bring it back to council for discussion and/or a motion. Don't all speak at once.
Jonathan, you just.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I think they look really nice.
I'm so glad. Because it'd be hard to change now, you know?
We're looking for a commitment for the total amount of $67,134. That's what we're looking for.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the reason why I have a $5,000 contingency is because I've been dealing directly with the fabricator on the lighting piece, the ones we just looked at. And I have to go through some sort of electrical contractor, and I don't know what the markup will be. So I gave ourselves a little bit of room.
I would move to commit $67,134 for the Grand Avenue Bridge monuments and lighting from the 7th Street funds, an A&I fund for type 4 type. You want me to read that whole thing?
I don't think it's
I think you
necessary.
got it.
Yep. All right, so we have a motion by Todd to approve the funds for the monuments and lighting for Grand Avenue Bridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, a motion by Todd and a second by Jonathan to approve the funds from the A&I fund in the amount of $67,134 for the bridge monuments and lighting. Any further discussion?
I have a quick clarification, because it says 4 of the type A and 6 of the type B. So does that not include the type C and D light pole?
The light poles are part of the Grand Avenue Bridge package.
So they
What
are
it
part-
doesn't include are the banners, but that's going to be next year,
Okay,
you know? We're doing what we can do, right?
thanks.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Trotter, yes. Godes, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cout, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Thanks, Leslie.
Yay!
That bridge is looking really good.
Thank you. And a big thanks to Jim Leggett, who had a lot to do with that, who's in our audience tonight, so thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thank
Tell you what, I've more surrounding that $3 million we contributed, but their eyes always light up. They're like, wow, that's a pretty good deal when they see the value of what's showing up here and how beautiful it is. So,
Thank you all for your leadership. Thank you.
good job out there.
All right, next on our agenda, we have planning item 15-17, consideration of adoption of the 6th Street Corridor Master Plan. The applicant is the City of Glenwood Springs. Hi, Gretchen.
Okay. Evening. As you all know, the construction and relocation of the Grand Avenue Bridge opens up some really exciting opportunities for the 6th Street corridor. No longer will 20 to 30,000 cars a day have to go past some of the businesses along portions of 6th Street. So for the past year plus, city staff has been working with Studio Insight and a 16-member steering committee along with businesses and property owners in the 6th Street area to create a plan for this corridor, which stretches roughly from the Yampa Vapor Caves on the east to Traver Trail on the west. The end result is a plan that provides vision and direction for streetscape improvements and for redevelopment in this area over the next 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. So this evening I've got our representatives from Studio Insight here to provide you with a broad overview of the plan. And after that, we'll answer any questions that you might have. We actually are not asking you all to approve the plan this evening. If there are no major revisions, then we'll bring it back before you at the next council meeting with a resolution to approve.
Okay.
So, Jamie or Jim?
Good evening, I'm Jim Leggett. I'm a partner with Studio Insight, who are a planning and landscape architecture firm based in Denver and also in Omaha. I am here with our senior planner, Cheney Bostic, and I'll kind of do a brief introduction to the plan and then turn it over to Cheney to actually go into a lot of the plan details. I think our overall presentation should be no more than 20 minutes, if that's okay. If anyone has need to shorten it, we can always speed it up. What I'd like to do is first and foremost take and acknowledge a number of individuals that have worked on this project locally and our consultant team. First and foremost, I think it's really important to call out our 16-member steering committee. David Howder, who's here tonight, led that committee, and we're very thankful and honored to have such a great, talented group of people working and guiding this process throughout the 12, 14 months that we've been working on this. City staff, Deborah, of course, and City Council, who have been working throughout this entire project and guiding this along. But really, the two city staffers, Gretchen Ricehill and Al Lorette, really do get a lot of credit for all of the hard work that they have given us throughout the entire process. And a real shout out to Leslie Bethel and the DDA for her leadership and just incredible enthusiasm and talent that she brings to this project and spirit. She's embarrassed in the back. And then, of course, our consultant team, Winter and Company, who helped really guide the whole zoning aspects and design guidelines. Alta Planning and Design, Alicia Zimmerman. The Land Studio, a local landscape firm, Doug Pratt. Local Derek Walters with Boundaries Unlimited, and also Julie Kolar with SE Design, who helped guide all of the graphic design through the whole process. So that's a shout out to all the consultant team and all of the incredible talented individuals that have worked on this project. Now, the vision of this action plan, why are we doing this? And why is it important? It is a blueprint for public and private investment, and it really does cover it serves as a way to prioritize public investment in the whole 6th Street corridor, and a tool to evaluate future development proposals. So this is really key to this. It's both a vision plan and an action plan. So what we are doing is we are focusing in on the area that you can see that's highlighted, which we call North Glenwood, and we are following a series of goals that really kind of helped us shape the entire plan. And I'll go through about 6 or 7 of these goals. As you can see, all of those arrows in those areas, it's so important for North Downtown, for this study area, to really connect to the major activity areas across the river, to the confluence area, the downtown area, and the Two Rivers Park and beyond over to the meadows. So it's really important, and how what we create and what we envision is playing to all of those other major activity areas in the downtown. We also want to serve the downtown as an extension to the downtown. So the identity of 7th Street, which is so strong today, we want to create an equally important and strong identity and a place on the north side of the river, which is at 6th Street. So because of the new bridge and the devolving of 2 blocks of 6th Street, we have a great opportunity for changing the shape of that street, the character of the street, and also the development potential of that area. We also want to enhance all of the length and the identity of 6th Street with new streetscape elements and furniture and lighting, and then set up the stage for infill and future development. We want to improve the connectivity of the 6th Street to the rest of the downtown, but also within the study area itself. How do individuals get from the hotels and walk east to the pedestrian bridge? How do we get from the hotel area across and into Two Rivers Park? So it's that cross connectivity through the neighborhoods that was an important part of this plan. And then how do we create nodes of activity with a mixture of uses, not only focusing on the historic kind of section of 6th Street right around Laurel and Pine, but also further down 6th Street, further west towards Devereaux Street. And then creating, just beautifying the edges. So not only looking at 6th Street, but at the perimeters of where are the edges and how can we strengthen those edges. One of the great focuses of this effort was focusing in on the far east end of 6th Street, where the Vapor Caves are and the Arts Center, and the connection to the bicycle trail. How can we improve upon what is there today and straighten out some of the problems that we have there, and really create more of a beautiful gateway to Glenwood right at that at the turn from the canyon. You can see before and proposal of how to just beautify and straighten out some of that area right at that entrance there at the east end of 6th. We want to engage the river. We want to really take a look at all aspects of where the north side of Glenwood touches into the river, especially at Two Rivers Park, and how we can really begin to strengthen the neighborhood connection, the river connections, both on the north side and certainly on the south side of the river. All right, so what I'll do is I'll kind of turn it over to Cheney, our senior planner at Studio Insight, and she can kind of explain the plan in more detail.
Thank you. I'm Cheney Bostic. So I'll walk you through some of the concepts, and I'll try to keep it high level for the sake of your time. So one thing that we tried to do with this large area is to break it up into smaller character areas and almost create their own districts out of the larger neighborhood plan. We looked at the inherent existing character as well as what we thought and what we heard from the community what the future character wanted to be. And so we developed 6 character areas based on that, with the brown being kind of this more historic feel with the existing historic buildings there, perhaps going after a historic district and formalizing that and really creating some tourism opportunities there. The North Glenwood Village core in the orange is really that extension of downtown where we think it can function and feel a lot like downtown. The North Glenwood residential neighborhood, kind of keep as it is. We like the character there. It should remain. And then the large red corridor is really where we saw the most change occurring in the future, where there is potential. And so, and this all relates back to the design standards and guidelines that we wrote. So this is really relative to future infill and private development that could occur there. So that's more of turning that more auto-oriented commercial corridor into a more walkable place. The riverfront neighborhood and Two Rivers Park, sort of using that goal of engaging the river more and creating some more outdoor amenities. So this all guided us into thinking about future zoning. Luckily, we were able to work hand in hand with Clarion, who's updating the zoning code. And so the timing was really perfect for us kind of setting this vision and then figuring out, okay, how do we implement that? And so this is the current zoning right now, C1 and C3, which today, as it is written in the old zoning code, is more of an auto-oriented culture. It's not downtown zoning. So in looking at the way that the new code was written, it really proved itself with a little bit of cleanup, and the C1 zone, the replacement zones, ended up fitting the character and what we envisioned for the neighborhood quite well. The only thing that we are recommending as a rezone, and this will be not part of the plan process, but part of the zoning code update, is just the area south of 6th Street. So everything that is currently zoned C3, we recommend rezoning and to meet the vision of this plan. And the hatched area is an idea that came out of this plan as how we might encourage and incentivize affordable housing. So the details, again, are yet to be worked out, but our solution there was to allow, to incentivize affordable housing, to allow a little bit of a height increase over the base zoning if you provide affordable housing in those hatched areas. So design standards and guidelines were part of this plan. They're Appendix A in the plan. And we, again, worked with Clarion looking at, what is the replacement zone of M1 and M2 and R3, and how does that fit into the plan, and going back and forth with them, well, we would change these numbers a little bit. So it really does fit the character of what we are envisioning for 6th Street. There are additional standards that we've recommended be included in the code, and Clarion is taking those into consideration. And I just want to point out the rezoning, the south of 6th Street, that will, again, this is a recommendation in the plan. It will be part of the zoning code update. And then the design standards and guidelines, of course, would not occur until redevelopment happens. Then they would follow these guidelines. And so here, I'll walk you through some of the topics that we go through, looking at that through block connectivity. How do we, Jim was talking about connectivity as one of the big pieces. So on some of the larger parcels, we wrote in some guidelines about ideas on how to connect, and the diagram on the right there shows a space in between buildings. Well, it could function as a pathway or a pedestrian paseo, like we've got downtown with kind of buildings starting to open into it. It could be a shared alley or access drive, or function like a street. Setback character, so when the building is set back from the street, what that character looks like, and we write some guidelines about, if it's along 6th Street, we really want it to be active. Architectural character, kind of using, depending on the location, if you're in the core area, we recommend kind of taking cues from historic buildings, using similar materials, but of current and contemporary flavor. Modulating the buildings so that they're not long, flat walls. and activating the street, and if it's not feasible to have, an active cafe or retail storefront, then public art or, seating or a display case to activate the street. Another major concept, and these are by chapter in the plan, is mobility, so looking at how people move about. One of the big concepts and themes that came out of this is really highlighting Glenwood as a recreational destination and highlighting how people move about and using the bicycle more, so providing those facilities. One of the concepts was creating this Glenwood Loop, and we have 2 phases that could occur there based on when and if pedestrian bridges were built. The loop, the 2 bridges shown in yellow, the Midland-Devereaux Bridge and then one across I-70, are kind of big ideas, of course, very expensive concepts. That's why we did the phased, where you could still implement that loop concept without these bridges, but this is just something to think about in the future. Enhancing transit service and kind of, there are those trolleys that service the tourist destinations, and kind of ganging those together and creating a branded transit that functions and brings people to and from, to again make that connection more seamless between downtown and 6th Street. So within the mobility, we know, and this was a big part that came up a lot in the project, is that likely redevelopment on those in 6th Street will not happen unless there is a major public-private partnership to construct a public parking structure, because parking is so expensive, and the redevelopment that you want to see, we feel like it would be a perfect opportunity for the city and a private developer to work together to provide a facility that could open up more land for redevelopment and help meet the goals over there. For streetscapes, so 6th Street, obviously this is 6th Street corridor plan. Those 2 blocks between, you can see the roundabout and Pine Street there, as Jim said, with the reduction in traffic flow there of estimated to be a reduction of about 80% of traffic, this becomes a really like a main street. 2 lanes of traffic, on-street parking, a protected bike facility there. So just you can see the change with it from existing to future. And then east of Pine, again, creating facilities. Here we have less right-of-way to work with, so we're recommending more sharrows in the street to provide bike facilities, but also bringing the trailhead up and really making a place out of that where the art center is there. You have a little bit of a nugget of land there that we think could really provide some placemaking and bring the trailhead up and again extend the bike trail to the street. And then West 6th Street, I'll just go through some concepts of a roundabout there by Traver Trail, kind of realigning that area and making it function a little better and safer. And then this is the existing street section, and then what we're proposing. So a little bit narrowing of the road to give a little bit more to the pedestrian and bike traffic. And then in future phases, perhaps not having a continuous turn lane because it makes the street feel really wide. The in-between the turn lanes or areas where you have to turn, you could provide some refuge with some trees there and make it more of a boulevard feel. Parks and open space, so one of the big concepts is to provide a public amenity at the landing of the bridge. This is a great terminus of Pine Street and Hotel Colorado there. There's a lot of synergy and opportunity, and creating a real public amenity there where you can have festivals and concerts and maybe even close the street and have a festival, kind of expand into the street are some of the ideas that we discussed. And then, of course, the most important thing for that space is to activate it and put eyes on it. So, hoping that new development will occur, existing uses could help activate that street, or bring in, a food truck, or maybe we talked about a permanent kiosk building there where you could buy ice cream or coffee. And so last but not least is the implementation part, which looks the most boring, but it's actually the most important. And so this is our checklist for the city to go through and implement all of these things. And so we have what the action is, who's responsible, what the timing is, and where the funding should come from. And so this sort of outlines everything that's in the plan. And I just want to reiterate the vision. You know, we as planners are looking into the future, and although we can't predict the future, these are all things that would greatly benefit the community and North 6th Street. But some of those things might change, and so I would just recommend that you always go back to the guiding principles of, you know, as long as it creates an extension of downtown and it enhances the identity and improves connectivity and creates facilities for bikers and pedestrians to feel more comfortable, and creating nodes of activity and a mix of uses, beautifying the edges and engaging the river, I think it will be successful. And I think that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Chase?
Has there ever been any discussion about, at least from the roundabout to the Yunficates, of actually renaming that street Main Street? Because, you know, that section of the street to me is kind of what everybody wanted when they wanted to save Grand Avenue. You know, we look at Grand Avenue with all the cars on it from 7th Street to about 10th or 11th. You know, and that section of Old Town is kind of where everybody wanted to, you know, have the cars off of Grand and kind of go back to that 2-lane local street with maybe trees down the middle, which we all know is not going to happen on the south side of the river, but it's happening over here. So, what do you? I know that's maybe a small detail, but and maybe not necessary, but it just seems like that would be a really cool main street. So that's kind of where it's being designed. And
Right.
have Hotel Colorado, the pool, and all that stuff on your main street down would be kind of a interesting concept.
Yeah, it wasn't discussed, but that's an idea.
Yeah, I agree. Janie's correct. It was never really in any of the conversations that I recall, either from the public meetings or from the steering committees. I do know that one concern from businesses, when you start renaming a street, it's quite expensive for them to redo their letterheads and whatnot, so we'd have to consider that, yeah.
Or I've seen, you know, places where they have named, you know, double named streets, and because it is the historic center, and perhaps if you move forward with creating a historic district, maybe there is an opportunity to kind of brand it as your historic Main Street, but still kind of keep the naming and properties as 6th Street addresses.
Any other questions for Cheney? Go ahead, Rick.
Excuse me, this is maybe a technical kind of question, but I'm wondering on page 26 where you have the connectivity coming down one of the mega blocks, you use the term street-like private drive. So what's a street-like private drive?
So that's a term I stole from Fort Collins. They use that a lot in terms of when they redevelop large parcels, but they want to have that street-like connectivity, but there's not a public street there. So this might be in between, it might connect to parking lots or a shared access between two adjoining properties. It basically means it's a private street or alley, but that it should function like a public right-of-way.
So would that require any sort of zoning change? Yeah, I mean, in your experience, or?
No, we wrote it into the standards and guidelines to follow certain procedures if say that property does redevelop, like we've shown under the improved connectivity. We have guidelines for how to create that. There may be some, if it is on in between two properties, there may be like a shared access easement kind of thing that happens.
So would the city have responsibility then for maintaining it? I mean, in your experience, just where you've seen it work in other places?
In some cases, there is an agreement that the private entity builds it and the city maintains it, yes. And in other cases, it's a private road and the city can say, you know, you build it and you maintain it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions? Any objections to having this brought to our next council meeting with a resolution to adopt it?
I think we should move this forward, and I just would like to thank you guys and the, our task force that pulled this together. I know you put a lot of hard work and a lot of hours into this, so thank you for your recommendations and suggestions.
I would concur with that. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A lot of work went into this.
So if I remember right, there was different street options, or do we get down to one option that you're recommending?
We did.
Down to one? I know there was a lot of.
We studied lots and lots of options, but this is the preferred option.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then the park?
Plaza.
area?
Plaza.
Plaza area? Is by adopting that, is that still up for discussion? I know there's still some people who would like to discuss the landing parcel.
It's identified on pages 59 and 60, and it shows multiple options.
Yeah, we left all of the studied options in there.
And these are just really kind of a roadmap, Todd. You're
Yeah.
not tied into anything.
Those were my only two questions. I couldn't remember exactly where the committee left those.
And we do have funding left over for that.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so it sounds like we're ready to see this at our next meeting with a resolution to adopt it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Gretchen.
I think so.
Thanks, Jim and Cheney.
Yeah, thank you guys. How soon does it look like these pictures?
As soon as we throw lots and lots of money at it. Yeah.
I will say this, we are definitely planning.
Yes.
And as Jim would always say, money follows plans, so without plans, you have no money or no options for it. So
Yeah.
Oh, Jim Sharp, yeah, yeah. But anyway, I love the plans, and
Yep.
it just, it kind of gets you to want to go make them happen sooner than later.
Yep, yeah, exactly. So when they start backing the money trucks up and unloading them all up,
Exactly.
and start building it.
No
All right.
money trucks.
10th and Blake for that one.
All right. So next item is ordinance number 14, series of 2017, and ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending section 080-040-015 and 080-060-020 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code regarding classification for the payment of system improvement fees related specifically to irrigation and raw water.
Sure.
usage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We discovered during the course of one of the last land use applications that there was a disconnect in the code as we've been doing several amendments to EQR classifications and some discounts related to those, that there was, in one place in the code, we had a 25% reduction for the use of raw water, and in another spot we had a 50% reduction. And as we discussed, I think it was at the last meeting or the meeting before, the intent council had at the time of adopting these was a 50% reduction in the EQR classification in the number if you had raw water irrigation. So this simply makes that consistent. Section D of 080-040-015, and then it is in 080-060-020, it is number 7, which is about midway through, where it outlines that 50% reduction. So with that, I'd answer any questions. This is really kind of a cleanup, and just for consistency's sake, I do know that there are at least one person in the audience who wanted to speak to EQR classifications in general tonight, since it was up on the agenda. So with that, I'd answer any questions.
Any questions for Carl?
I had a question, just reading through this and not having a lot of background, and on the section, so section 3 of the ordinance is saying that basically section 080, 060, 020 is repealed and replaced in entirety?
That was for simplicity, so that there wasn't a lot of strike through and renewal. It has more to do with the drafting ease, to make sure we don't screw up the whole table one more time by having a minor change in one place.
Okay.
I was just outlining for you where that change occurred within that larger repeal and replace.
And you said that's in like number 7?
Number 7, where number 7 is, in that table is irrigation using secondary raw water. And it's just where it says where irrigation will be exclusively from raw water source. The EQR value is determined through this section will be reduced by 50% for water only. Sewer values will not change. So that's the section. It's just that we've amended this so many times, I really don't want to screw it up.
Well, that's what I was wondering about, because when I go on to the municipal code online and I look at this table,
It's different. And we're working on that. Part of that is this. We're getting this cleaned up so that we can ask MuniCode to correctly update the entire that section of the municipal code so that it is accurate.
So were all these other changes that with the hotels, motels, and all
That was all
was
done
that
via
done
ordinance
previously? Okay.
almost a year ago.
Okay. That's
So
what I
yeah,
needed
no, so we're
clarification
really
on.
trying to get the online code correct.
Okay.
So all these other changes were done back then. We're just clarifying this one section, so.
Okay.
Right,
That's
so we're
what
not
I wanted.
actually taking a new action. I mean, we are, but we're not.
So just number 7?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions for Carl? All right, at this point, I would open it up to the public for any comments anyone would like to make. Mr. McGregor.
Sure there's going to be a big rush here, so I'll get in first. I'm Robert McGregor, 3925 County Road 154, Glenwood Springs. For those of you who don't know me, also the developer at Glenwood Meadows, stakeholder in this community, therefore, for the last 20 years. Ostensibly tonight, you're just clearing up a piece of code. Obviously, we're in support of the 50% reduction for anybody who can provide a raw water system. That was something actually council agreed to last year, and as Carl explained, we're just tidying that up. But in doing so, we're also reiterating the process we participated in last year, and I'd like to highlight something that's sort of coming out now with a certain clarity that didn't exist during the process, and it's what I referred to as the alternative minimum tax. It's the square footage override that has been placed in the code, and you can find it in Exhibit A. This is all fairly technical, so I just want to back up to the overall process that a number of us participated in last year, a long and deliberate process. I think it was highlighted by Councilman Davis, in which we looked very closely at certain inequities in the fee code, and specifically tried to come up with a rational nexus for the fees. The background to that was the demonstrable fact that the code had been written that the fees would rise 5% a year, which they did for the last 20 years, when in fact inflation was 2.5%. So there was an inescapable fact that the fees had doubled during that period, and you either had to come to the conclusion that they were wrong at the beginning or wrong at the end. The fact is that the conclusion was, as they're applied today, that the fees have not gone down. So that's in that endeavor, we didn't succeed as a development community of trying to point out the burden of the fees. But I'm specifically here to address a piece of the equation, which is this alternative square footage override, which is placed on the fees. We had a long discussion, and I was at all the meetings except the last one. And I think with the best will in the world, this alternative square footage override was introduced as an alternative way of looking at how you apply these fees. And the best way of illustrating it is this, that if you go by the EQR system, you come up with one number, but in almost every case that you can think of, by applying an alternative square footage override, you increase the fees owed. And by way of example, a 550 square foot studio, you apply the EQRs and it comes up with one number, you apply the square footage, and that number goes up by 33%. A 720 square foot, one bedroom apartment, you apply the EQRs, which we work through endlessly as the FAIR methodology. You apply this square footage override, which I believe was delivered at the last minute without fully thinking it through, and the fees are raised by 73%. Well, obviously these numbers start to matter when you apply them in the real world to projects that we're trying to attract to this city. And I'm in the same boat as you in terms of trying to attract these projects as a stakeholder and a land seller. It's more than a decade since I was entitled to bring residential units to the city. We failed to do that. Part of the reason is the expense of getting things done here. So specifically, I am referring to what Ordinance 14 would do tonight, would codify something that I think could easily be struck from the code, and that is the alternative square footage requirement. It doesn't in any way drastically slash the fees. It still, I believe, creates a problem that has led to almost no apartments for rent being developed in this city, but it does go a little way to helping, and it's something that's difficult to get into. You know, it's more something you'd have to direct staff to look at on your behalf. But as I say, what I think was a well-meaning attempt to perhaps discourage MAC mentions by having this square footage alternative is in reality simply jacking up the fees even higher than they were. So just to talk for 2 minutes, if you'll excuse me, philosophically about, you know, why people build rental apartments. It is a business. It's not like other aspects of residential development. People will come to Glenwood because they want to be in Glenwood and build a house. The only reason people will come to Glenwood and build rental apartments is to make a reasonable return on the capital deployed doing that. We have examples in our midst of one of the richest families in northeast Colorado coming here, getting a full set of entitlements and not proceeding with the project. So it's not a question of money, it's a question of what is a reasonable return on costs. Fees are part of that equation. This is a very simple, small fix that would help in that equation. When people build apartments, as I say, it's not for emotional reasons, it's for a reasonable expectation of a return, of which the fees are part of it. You as community leaders are obviously looking at other aspects of why rental apartments may be desirable, such as providing future generations of people that sit on the steering committees. We heard tonight there were 14 people leading this fantastic effort on 6th Street. So again, that's more a question for you, how you see the future unfolding, that people can live here. How can you incentivize people to come and build in your community? I mean, I'm here, I'm trying to make things happen. The only 60 units we've managed to achieve at Glenwood Meadows were done on almost 100% federal subsidy. That is not widely available, otherwise we'd be trying to bring you more of those. So the rest of the world consists of having to attract investors, whether they're families from northeast Colorado or whether they're Texans, and give them a fair deal. One simple revision I believe you could make is to strike this square footage override, what I call the alternative minimum tax, because it's working against what I believe was the intent of a long and serious negotiation last summer. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Unless you have any questions that I could
Have any questions for Robert? All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, any further public comments? Seeing none, I will close it to the public and bring it back to council for discussion and a motion.
Can I ask you a quick question, Mike? Because you know when we did all the EQRs, I know that's not what we're doing tonight, but just since Robert brought it up, I guess I don't quite understand the square footage.
Basis?
I mean, did it,
What it was based on was, we had one set of numbers provided by our consultants that were actually much higher than this, in terms of EQRs, which are kind of just, I would argue, not really based in reality. So what was requested was that we asked Robin Milliard to provide us with actual water usage data from some of our existing apartment projects. We looked at the 23rd Street apartments, we looked at the Matchbuff apartments, we looked at the Manors over here. Can't remember what else we looked at. We looked at a number of different projects. We knew how many units they were, we knew what square footage they were, and then we tried coming up with a formula that actually represented the water usage, and EQR is actually intended to be a certain amount of water usage on a daily or annual basis. So we looked at how do those units, how does usage of those water usage of those units, if you boil it down to a per bedroom or per square foot basis, what is that number? And that's what this came out to. If I recall, the .06 was actually an approximation. I think it was actually .05 something, and it was just decided for ease of not having like .05378 or something. It was decided to round it up to .06, and when you round up something, that small to the next decimal, it's actually a fairly large increase. But I think that's where it originated from. I don't necessarily disagree with Robert's perspective on this. I do think that most, like he said, I just did the math here while he was talking, but he said, if you had a one-bedroom, 700 square foot, get my thing to work here, just a minute.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the one I used by way of example is if you do say a 3-bedroom, 1,500 square foot, 2-bath duplex, underneath the .25 per bedroom, you'd be at .75. If you use that per 100 square foot, you'd be at .9 of a EQR, so that the 100 foot would push you up slightly higher than what just a bedroom
And
count.
the .75 you would have for the 3 bedrooms, yeah.
You'd have, instead of a .7, it's or the greater than, you'd be at a .9 instead of a .75, depending on your square footage.
Right, a 700 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment would be 0.42 EQRs based on the square footage, but it's only 0.25 EQRs based on the bedroom, so that is a fairly significant increase.
so, I mean, before we get onto the raw water thing, which is really what we're doing here.
Right.
Right now, I mean, but earlier in the day, you asked for a specific proposal. Is this something that you would consider maybe a specific proposal to talk about, and then we can get upon our business of getting this approved tonight? But is this something that we should talk about, this change that Robert's suggesting? And
Yeah,
I haven't gone to down to those details or down into the weeds on that math, but is that something that we could discuss?
I certainly think so, yeah. I kind of think anything's on the table. I look at this and, just the whole, I know this isn't the purpose of this conversation, but we're on it, and, we only have 22 minutes if we still want to have our...
Yeah. And if I may, I know we need to catch up the former council members before we have that conversation. I think
Yeah.
we're going to set up that
work
meeting,
session.
and of course, we'll
Yeah.
advertise it so anyone else can attend as well.
Right. And I think there's a number of changes we could look at. I think that's one of them. I think there's some others that we could do to look at incentivizing rental properties that are workforce affordable. So, all right. So any further questions, discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Well, I just understood from this conversation that we're going to have more discussion on this?
Not on this particular item. This item is purely related to the correction of the code to address the reduction of fees related to raw water for irrigation.
Yeah, I mean, I
We
would,
are adopting the full 08,
The full thing
060.
has already been adopted.
has already been adopted.
This is
We're just,
code.
like I said, I was just trying not to mess it up by
Right.
having a bunch of strike-throughs, and I mean, this has been a struggle with this particular section of the code, which is why I took the approach I did.
So the concept would be that we go ahead and adopt this tonight and
Yeah.
then we revisit it?
Yeah, because
again?
really, all we're trying to do with this one tonight, I know it's a repeal and readoption of that whole section, but I'm just trying to address this disconnect between the 25 and the 50%, in part so
clean
that
it
we
up.
can get the muni code correctly uploaded so that everybody's looking at the right thing online. So my ask is, can we get through this one and have that separate policy discussion? If we're going to do additional revisions, I don't want to hold this ordinance up to do that.
And my request is before we have that policy discussion is we catch the 3 new council members up on what had occurred.
Yes.
And to a
That
certain
would-
extent
that
myself
would be
too,
great.
because I missed like 95% of the conversation.
Right.
And then, because otherwise you're coming from totally different places.
And I'd love to have a good understanding of the math on that and why it was set up. Yeah, more on why it was set up. So, okay. Great.
Okay, I would move to approve ordinance number 14, series of 2017, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending section 080-040-015 and 080-060-020 of the Glenwood Springs Municipal Code regarding classification for the payment of system improvement fees.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Kathy and a second by Rick to approve ordinance number 14, series of 2017. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Trogger, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cout, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right, now at this point, we have we need to make our appointments to our various boards and commissions. Is there any particular order you'd like to take them in, Catherine?
On the historical preservation, we just had one person, so we probably don't need to vote on that one.
Do we want to go ahead and make a motion to approve, I can't remember her name, is it Deborah? No, what was her name?
Deborah Bosnick?
For the historic preservation by acclamation? Is that
Yes.
acceptable?
Do you want me to make a motion to that
Sure.
effect? I move to appoint Deborah Bosna to the Historic Preservation Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion to appoint Deborah Bosna to the Historic Preservation Commission. Motion by Kathy, second by, I'm not sure who got it. Shelley? Todd? Is there any further discussion? Let's go ahead and call the question.
Trogger, yes. Goldish, yes. Davis, yes. Gamba, yes. Leahy, yes. Voorhees, yes. Cout, yes. Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Do you want to do Planning Commission next?
Planning, yes.
Okay, so for the Planning and Zoning Commission, it has a vacancy for one alternate seat, and we have 2 applications.
One alternate, but 2 candidates for the slot.
Yep, yep. Yeah, we're voting for one candidate for the alternate seat on the Planning Commission. Yeah. It's a very fancy ballot.
Yeah, that's right.
We're getting high tech.
You didn't like our chicken scratch.
No, because our names
Well, the
are-
number of times that you listed yourself as who you were voting for, and the other name is.
We get hanging
Cast
chads
aside.
and all sorts of stuff going on, so. in case we have a hanging chat.
Yeah, one or the other.
You don't have to vote both ballots,
No,
just one
those ones
ballot.
are coming.
Yeah.
Those are coming.
We didn't get our ballots for the River Commission yet. I think just in case because sometimes we have to vote twice.
Shall I go ahead and do?
Yes.
So before we
I'm ready.
go here,
McGregor. Wissing. 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 McGregor.
5-2 for Amber.
Thank you, Heather. Please
Yes.
don't give up.
Thank you for,
yeah, thank you. So before we go here, can we have a brief
Discussion.
discussion that I made this morning, because I know I. Well, I think I stepped out.
Yeah, we're going to vote for two of these candidates.
So the River Commission though now has 9, correct?
Yes.
And we're moving to
7 was the direction of council, but and you may have stepped out for this, I suggested that, what I was hoping to do is the River Commission is also working on updating its, kind of what its charge is underneath the code, which needs to be amended. I was kind of hoping to amend the number and what their duties were at the same time, recognizing that you guys are sort of making a policy call here that you're only going to fill 2 of these slots, so there's only 7 members on the board.
So I guess that was my question for council is, it's a policy call to go from 9 to 7. And obviously we had some candidates this morning that were extremely qualified to sit on this board. And it's just, and I'm okay, pick and do, that's where we go. But that's really hard to not let some of those candidates volunteer on a board when I think they have just some incredible credentials that I'd like to hear from. But if it's everyone's kind of thought that we're going to go to 7, then that's fine. But
well, that was kind of a decision made a month ago. Oftentimes, there's probably 9 candidates that are qualified to sit up here as well, but we usually try to limit that.
And sometimes there's only like no candidates that are qualified.
Speak for
We're here
yourself.
anyway.
3.
well, and I understand that that's been some direction, but I don't know that we've made a formal decision. And so that was a question for me is is it right to go ahead and only appoint 2 right now when formally there are 9 on the board? And I don't know how far out that work session will take place, and that we do make the policy decision.
It is council's discretion how many people you want to appoint. You could appoint none if you would prefer. I mean, it really is a board that serves at your pleasure. How many of those slots you fill, there's no requirement you fill any of them or that you fill all of them.
So do we want to briefly, just briefly have a discussion, come to a conclusion, do we want 7 or not? I don't disagree with your perspective, Todd. I actually share it. I think we have 5 highly qualified candidates here. If we only appoint 2, we're going to be telling 3 of them thanks but no thanks. That being said, I do think a 7-member board is a lot less unwieldy than a 9-member board. It's able to get a quorum with only 4 people there instead of 5, which apparently they've had a hard time getting a quorum in the past. So.
Historically, there has been that issue a number of times, which is why we kind of came back around to that. And even though we had 9 people, we could only get sometimes 3 or 4 to show up at their meetings. So it became, the discussion was, if it was 7, like most of our, I think, boards and commissions, it just becomes easier to get a forum together. And as you know, the smaller the group, the easier the
possibly offer an alternative or a compromise, which would be several,
Between them four and four votes.
several of our boards and commissions have an alternate, and we could appoint 7 and then
Two alternates.
have an extra one as an alternate.
Can we do that without changing the charter?
Without changing the code. It's not provided for in the code. I don't know that, there again, this board serves at your pleasure. I'm not, what's the risk?
We can
I
clean
mean,
it up.
we can clean it up to match what your policy call is. I'm not gonna tell you you can't.
That's
I
not a
think that
bad
would be-
approach, because then some of the alternates could still attend, give their input, but.
So then the question is, do you
and help
want-
provide the
yeah.
quorum in the event that.
Yeah, do you want 1 or 2 alternates, or 3 alternates?
I'm not arguing one way or the other, I was just giving some historical background to
Well,
what our discussion
you've
was
been the
a month
liaison.
ago.
You've worked with the board.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that 2 or 3 months ago, because of the level of dysfunction with this board, we were kind of inclined to disband it,
Yeah.
so.
Or merge it
Merge it
with
with,
the
yeah.
Park and Rec Board, which also had often the same kind of problem. So at that time, that's when we said, well, let's just make it 7. I think Park and Rec is 7. So that just makes sense to kind of bring consistency to these boards in those areas or commissions.
I would be, I think the Transportation Commission is 7 with a, with an alternate, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I think that works fairly well. I'd be personally in favor of, saying let's appoint 2 as the official seat member, official board members, and 2 as alternates. Does that seem reasonable?
2 or 1?
Okay, 2 and 1 alternate, okay, I can do that too.
I'm okay
Right.
with that. Is everybody
Yeah.
good with that?
And the only other, I guess then another, so are we in general agreement with that? Okay,
Yeah.
so then, the only other point I would make, and this is for the new board members, although this isn't written in our code, when we have a situation like this where 7 of us are voting for 5 people for 3 seats, you can get, a situation where someone has the most votes, but they only got 3 votes. And so basically what we do is we keep voting until we get at least 4, until each of these candidates that are appointed get at least 4 votes from council. So that's why we get sometimes multiple ballots.
Maybe not enough.
We may not have enough. But usually, what happens is 1 or 2 candidates will have at least 4 votes, and then we might have 1 second vote for the alternate position, so.
You're going to be messing with my vote tallying skills.
What's that?
You're going to be messing with my vote tallying
I
skills.
probably will. So, do we want to actually appoint who we want to be the alternate, or just whoever gets the fewest number of votes? Is it?
I would suggest you, in this first round of balloting, you vote for 3. Let's see how they shake out, and then I can provide some input from there on how to get us to a resolution if we're not there yet.
Okay.
It says here vote for 2 in red.
That's
Should
because,
I mark through that? Okay.
Thank you, Catherine, for putting together the very nice ballot. This is great.
Jill did most of the work.
Okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Feinsinger. Gordon. Trace. Feinsinger. Gordon. Trace. Feinsinger. Gordon. Trace. Gordon. Murphy. Trace.
number 1 is Gordon, number 2 is Trace, and number 3 is Fansinger.
Feinsinger. So Feinsinger did get 4 votes. He would be your alternate.
Okay. All right.
That was not
Did that
terrible.
in one ballot.
That may actually be a record. I'm really pretty sure it was. I don't know if we've ever.
All right. Okay, so moving on, we're up to board and commission, or no, that was, report from city administration.
Okay. I'm taking tomorrow off. Jen will be acting manager. And July 6th, I wanted to let you know what we're doing. We are going to bring a small contingent of staff to meet with the governor to lobby for our Tiger Grant. So, that's all I got.
Excellent. Carl, you have 4 minutes.
I was going to say, I got to think a little bit about what I'm going to say, and then I'm going to get to it. And then, no. I don't have a ton. I do, just following up on the July 6th meeting, my partner Jim New will be here. He's going to stop in on the 15th to meet everybody that doesn't know him. Most of you guys probably already know Jim. Sadly, he and I have both been around the community a long time. So anyway, he's going to be filling in for me. I'm going to be attending this meeting at the governor's office, and then I'm flying out to take my daughter out east for some college visits and to drop her off at a writing camp. So anyway, outside of that, I really don't have anything else, other than hopefully I'm going to be around for the summer. So after a lot of travel in the last month and a half, which is unusual for me. So.
You don't have
I
4 minutes?
I was thinking about messing with Steve, but I'm gonna.
All right, we're adjourned.